5 Base on Balls podcast. I have myself hosting tonight with Braxton, Paul, and Connor. So to start us off, we are going to go over the matchups of the week, and we are going to start with Connor's matchup against Dave. Connor, what's your thoughts on your matchup versus Dave?
Yeah, the last couple of weeks we've really discussed how Dave's done a great job managing, but his team just didn't fire this week for whatever reasons. Andrew Vaughn only had 5 points. Mitch Haniger, I think, only had 1. My pitching was still a little bit off, but was top 3 or 4 in offense. Chris Bryant put up great numbers. Anthony Santander had 77, which I don't think anyone expected. So I think pretty convincing win, and we'll see if I can continue to build on it.
Yeah, for me, the Sod Poodles, we kind of been sleeping on you, Connor. This is 2 weeks in a row scoring in the mid-600s. You get kind of a balanced approach from offense and pitching. And talking with Dave, this week was kind of one of those weeks where he really thought he was competing, and I think, barely able to crack 400 points has kind of changed his mind. He's kind of mentioned selling and going a different route. Paul, what did you see in this matchup?
So I've been a champion of Connor's team for a while now. He's got the bats. 418 points out of his bats is an insane number. Congrats to Connor. Really good week, 640 points. If you're over 600, you're competing with the big dogs. As for Dave, he's, it's tough how it goes sometimes. His bat production was pretty solid, but, under 100 points for his arms, it's tough. Really tough trade with Ashcrafts and his negative 19. But it's, Amarillo's not going anywhere. They're a good team. So congrats.
Braxton, what did you see in this matchup?
I just saw a lot of production from guys that maybe we didn't expect to have that, like 62 points from Javier Baez and 51 points from Chris Bryant this week. Pretty interesting there. I also like the way Connor was able to find some like diamond in the rough pitching performances too from like guys like Tommy Henry and Trevor Williams that chipped in. This is what I'm sure we'll get into a later discussion in this podcast about just managers managing, and Connor did a great job of managing his team this week. I also think that 52 points from Blake Snell wouldn't hurt. But as far as Dave goes, it'll be interesting to see how he takes over his vision going forward as it pertains to selling off some of these guys. And I know if he puts some guys like Josh Jung on the block, I'll certainly be interested. So,
yeah, and kind of the last word here would be, I think Paul touched on it. 67 points from Dave's pitchers is rough for a week. I mean, he's got to get some pitching in there if he is going to try to compete at all. And on the other side, I think when Connor traded for Blake Snell, I think a lot of us were probably scoffed at it. And Snell has rebounded nicely this week, and maybe, I'm sure Connor hopes he continues that. We will move on to the matchup of the week. I guess there were several matchups of the week, but this was definitely the upset of the week. Clearwater Beach Dogs versus the Bismarck Larks. The Larks beat them 622 to 595. Braxton, I'll let you have the floor. What do you think about that dub?
I'm extremely happy about it. I was not expecting it. I predicted I was going to lose last week on the show. I honestly, after we got up by 100 on Wednesday, I actually thought that we might have a chance, but then I saw him climbing back a little bit, and I was like, oh, well, damn. But, Hen still had a decent week, and props to him. His team is very good. But I'm not going to say I got lucky this week, but, I'm probably not getting 44 points from Mark Leader Jr. every week going forward. Sorry. But and I could have maybe done a little bit better here. I got 6 points from Josiah Gray and 2 points from Alek Manoah this week. I'm not very pleased about that, but we'll see what happens going forward. I like the trades I made, some of the trades this week we'll talk about, but bringing in Andrew Vaughn is really going to help going forward, and it's just a big win in my my little gauntlet session here, starting off 1-1. I'm happy about that.
Paul, what are your thoughts?
Big week for Bracton. Big week for Bracton. He's still in it. He's killing it. But for Hendog, is this the best 2-3 team ever? Because it boggles my mind how he's got all this talent, and yet he still he's just finding ways to lose. I just don't get it. But player of the week, though, I think for Bracton, Jonathan India, a guy that I've been down on publicly on this podcast. Really big week with 61 points, so big ups for Bracton.
And Connor, what did you think?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about Bracton's 7-week gauntlet and preparing for that, and this is off to a great start. Paul Goldschmidt had 70 points, but other than that, the offense for Hendog really wasn't that incredible. So I'm really curious if going forward he's going to use some of those assets. I think he has multiple first-round picks 2 of the next 3 years to supplement that. And but the balance for both teams, hitting and pitching, was terrific. So I think both these teams are definitely not ones to sleep on going forward.
Yeah, for me, I think Bracton at 4-1, this definitely changes kind of the narrative. Probably lights a fire under the Bismarck Larks. I think it's time to go. You're 4-1. There's 14 weeks to the season left. There's a real shot at him. We've been talking about Bracton fighting for the 6th and 7th seed. At 4-1, you got to start talking about the 4th and 5th seed. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. As far as Hendog goes, Paul's right at 2-3, man. It's hard to believe with this roster the way it is. But I think sometimes you got to manage your way out of a funk. I think maybe Hendog's team could use a little bit of retooling. I wouldn't do a lot, wouldn't screw with this roster a lot, but maybe a little bit of retooling would go a long way there. And for the next matchup we will discuss, we'll go ahead and knock out my matchup. Bowling Green Hot Rods, 853 versus the Oklahoma City Dodgers, 359. Connor, I'll let you go.
So one big metric that we've determined the top of the league is how Cody and Heights teams are doing in terms of point differential. And I think we're all kind of in agreement that Cody was going to win. But he outscored the rest of the league by 100 points and outscored Heights by 200. This is a statement win from the Hot Rods that they are probably the front runner for the entire thing. The Dodgers did have a decent showing, but 118 points really isn't going to cut it, and I'm really curious to see in future weeks if any moves are going to be made. Ha-Seong Kim with 30 points is a really nice pickup. He's been on the waiver wire in and out. Joey Gallo only with 5 points. I think after his hot start, it's tough to say what will be the norm there, but yeah, I don't know if there's too much to discuss when Cody's total literally doubled the Dodgers.
Bracton, what are your thoughts when you look at this matchup?
So we've been hearing you say for weeks how you wanted a more complete performance from your team, and I feel like you got that sort of, and you still had some guys that were underperforming, like Brandon Lau -2, Clayton Kershaw 1, and Zach Wheeler 5, but putting up 853 with those guys not contributing the way they usually do could be even scarier in weeks where literally everything is clicking. So I feel like Connor said, this was a statement week for you, and I feel like I was being generous with the 150-point prediction last week, and now I know not to do that again. So big week for the Hot Rods, and interesting to see what's going on going forward here.
Paul, do you have any thoughts?
532. 532 points from his bats. That beats. I don't know. I can't look at it. 532 points from his bats beats at least 3 or 4 teams in this league this week. Cody's team is unbelievable. He's got talent at every position. He's deep. He's got good pitching. It's going to be tough to beat him this year. I see it. I think he went undefeated last year in the regular season. I can see that happening again.
Yeah, it was Chad kind of got the brunt of it this week. I had mentioned, Braxton's right, I had mentioned kind of struggling to put that complete week together. You guys are going to laugh. I really don't feel like I've quite done that yet. My bats were just electric on all cylinders all week. But I feel like my offense, Clayton Kershaw 1 point. Like, come on, man, I needed more there. Dylan Cease is really struggling right now. But the team altogether obviously played really well. My fear is I burn off too many points this week going into a big matchup next week we'll get to later. So I'm a little worried about that. But, again, we'll talk about that later. We will move now to Paul's matchup. The Norfolk Tides versus the Richmond Flying Squirrels. Paul lost by 2 points. Paul, I'm just going to let you have the floor for a minute.
I kind of would like to pass. I'm not going. No, I'll talk about it.
Okay.
Scott, you're a great owner. I background, as everybody that's listening to this podcast, I'm sure they know. I have bagged on this roster, formerly Scoop's, now Scott's. I've bagged on this roster since the start of the season, and it is poetic justice that I play them this week and I lose by 2 points. I'm not thrilled about it. This week, midweek, I traded for Martin Perez. Martin Perez threw up negative 10 points for me. If I don't make that trade, I just don't do anything. I win this week. The tough one to swallow for sure. 352 points for my bats is decent. TJ Friedel had a good week. Adley had a decent week. You say Kikuchi, 29 points. Nobody wants to trade for him, but he's every week throwing up 20-plus points. But nobody wants to trade for him. But shout out Cal Quantrill for Scott. Shout out Camilo Duvall. But let's be real. Shout out Lourdes Gurriel. This guy, if you look at his last 3 games, has scored 79 points. Lourdes Gurriel. Again, if that's Juan Soto, if that's Cunha, Vlad Guerrero Jr., you can deal with that. But this guy threw up that many points. Christian Walker had 77 this week. If you're a competing team, you need to go look at Scott right now and say, I'll give what it takes to get those 2 guys. So I'll conclude with congrats to Scott. 2 points. It's a freaking walk, a strikeout, a single, 1 more. But
yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, man. And I spoke with you a little bit this week. You kind of jumped ahead and got a big lead, and then he kind of caught back up, and it kind of fluctuated there. I was pretty confident that you was going to end up pulling it out, and then today went about as perfect for Scott as it could have. I mean,
168 points today.
Yeah, everything broke the way he needed it to break to beat you on Sunday by 2 points, and it did. Connor, what was your thoughts on this matchup?
I just want to give props to both of the managers. TJ Friedel didn't have too much playing time, but I think he put up a 50-piece this week. Kyle Schwarber having 26, a little bit low. Estuary Ruiz doing well for Paul. And the Martin Perez trade didn't work out this week, but I think the pitchers used just trying to get that team in the best position, since Paul did have a little bit of a retool. 578 is not anything to laugh at. And then, as previously mentioned, Duvall just went off. This is the first week, I think, that Francisco Alvarez has seen consistent playing time. So 22 and not being that far off from Adley Rutschman's 33 is a good sign. And, yeah, I think contending teams need to take a better look at Scott's roster and say, well, there are definitely pieces here that could be used for an upgrade.
Yeah, Domingo Germán and Cal Quantrill kind of stand out to me. Braxton, what's your thoughts? on this matchup?
It's a painful loss for Paul, and it's unfortunate, but I wouldn't say he had a bad week necessarily. I think he got some good production out of his pitchers, which was or most of the pitchers. Like Matthew Boyd had 31, Patrick Corbin 32. Like there are definitely some bright spots for sure, but like to echo what you guys were saying, props to Scott. I think this is that team's first win of the year, so good on him for getting that done. And I really like to see the young guys stepping up, like Francisco Alvarez you mentioned, but Tristan Casas had 19 points. Lars Nootbaar 42 points. Bryson Stott was kind of meh, but like the point I'm trying to make is maybe these young guys are actually starting to come into the fold a little bit for Scott here and start producing a little bit. Will be interesting to see the rest of the way how they do.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
I just saw this, and I'm even more mad now. So Ryan Yarbrough, I added him Monday last week just because I needed starts, and for his one start that I had him for, he put up negative 3 points. That was against my Orioles. And then I dropped him because I traded for a pitcher from Texas. His name is Martin Perez. And so then Scott, being a good manager, decided that he needed a start for today. So he picked up Ryan Yarbrough. And Ryan Yarbrough scored 22 points today because he played the Oakland Athletics, who are a bad team. 25-point swing. That's your difference right there.
Yeah, that's brutal. I was going to say, for me, with this new influx of owners, for us, kind of the old heads here, I guess it's me, Paul, and Braxton at this point, but rebuilding now is different than it was before. These new owners have brought a new era of rebuilding. This isn't make your roster as bad as possible, score 200 points every week, get killed, and just hoard prospects and picks. These people are trying to get youth in and win now. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing with Scott's team. I think, I think that's what Connor's done in Amarillo. He kind of had a jump. He's been here a little bit longer than Scott and Dave. So he's kind of a little more advanced in that plan. But I think it's pretty interesting to see kind of the new way of the way these rebuilds are going. We will move on now to the El Paso Chihuahuas versus the Hartford Yard Goats. John Haidt got the win, 665 to 624. It was close. Braxton, what's your thoughts on this matchup?
I'm going to echo what you just said about new owners stepping up and rebuilding in their own different ways because I really, really like what Smell's been doing. And if you notice, he's got a haul of draft picks coming up in the next couple years. And if he wanted to, I think he could really be in contention for one of these playoff spots because we're getting consistent production out of some of these guys. Like Ian Happ had 51 points this week. Whit Merrifield had 43 points. Zach Eflin, who everybody has been kind of like moving off of, had 50 points. Nathan Eovaldi, 39. Like stuff like these guys, diamonds in the rough like that. I really think that, even though he lost, I think that he put up a good fight. He would have beat, count it. He would have beat me by 2 points. He would have beat Hendog. He would have beat Dave. He would have beat Chad. He would have beat Homko and Bry. And, hold on, I lost the score. He would have beat Paul and Scott. He would have beat 8 teams this week. So Smell had a really good week. Props to him. And if John Haidt were here, I kind of miss that John Haidt isn't here. I can hear him go off on guys like Clay Holmes and Brad Keller and everything. But at the end of the day, a win's a win, and it all counts the same. Even if he had blown them out by 300 or 400 points, it's still a win. So congrats to John Haidt.
Paul, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so sort of a down week. I wouldn't call it a down week, though, for John Haidt. 665 is a ton of points, 433 points from your bats. But Shohei Ohtani, only 59 points this week, so, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe trade him or something. But the big concern, I guess, maybe for John Haidt, 232 points from your arms. He got outscored by Smell. by 6 points from just arms, which is really interesting. But I like Smell's team. He's got good players. I won't say anything about G1 Bay this week, but he's got good players. You know, he's hanging in there, 58 from Ketel Marte. You know, rebuild, not rebuild, retool, whatever. Smell's competing every week, and he's a team that you don't want to see on your schedule.
Connor, what are we missing? What'd you see, bud?
Smell beat John in pitching points, and his relievers were net negative. Craig Kimbrell minus 18, Brad Boxberger minus 6. And I will call it a down week for John Haidt because he scored 100 points over his current week total of 665 every week prior to this. But the fact that the Chihuahuas have gotten over 200 points pitching despite the relievers, 380 for offense is a very competitive number that was pretty evenly spread. Whit Merrifield got 43. Harrison Bader had a really quick appearance but got 28 points in 5 at-bats. That's crazy. So I definitely think that Smell can take his team in a number of directions, but realistically, he has the tools with the picks and some younger players to drive that where he wants.
Yeah, for me, you know, I think for Smell, even though he took a loss here, I think it kind of gives him confidence to say he can compete. You know, this is a 41-point game here. Over the course of 7 days, that's not a whole lot. He gets some relief pitching help, maybe another quality start here or there. The score is different. He's close. Very close, and I know that he's not interested in a long-term rebuild. So, but I think this gives Smell the confidence to kind of move forward. And for John Haidt, listen, it was a down week, but I can tell you when you've got the target on your back and everybody wants to be the one to take you down, I know how that feels. And when you don't play your best and you still win, that is massive because, you definitely go all week and you feel super exposed because you're so used to putting teams away by Wednesday. So I know how John Haidt felt this week. But listen, a win's a win, and it's really good to win when you were kind of exposed and not really maybe supposed to win. So that's interesting for John Haidt there. Moving forward, he stays undefeated, one of the few undefeated teams left, and I think Smell's got some confidence that he can hang in this league. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. So we're going to move on now to the Rocky Mountain Vibe and Kannapolis Cannonballers matchup. Bravo took that one pretty handedly, 570 to 449. I'm pretty sure Bra's not too content with a 570 point performance. Connor, what do you think about this matchup?
Well, I just think Bry might be the best manager for pitchers. If you just scroll down the number of arms used, it doubles or maybe triples what Kannapolis was able to throw out. So even though there may not have been too many electric performances, 49 from Joe Ryan immediately stands out, 32 from Javier and Lopez, nothing to laugh at. Those performances add up from the streamers. 389 points for offense, also pretty good. I think in previous weeks, we've discussed that the points against for Bry has been a little bit low, and that didn't change. Luis Robert had 70, so that can put a shock into people, but Kannapolis just didn't have the pitching, and it'll be interesting to see how Bry fares against better competition in the weeks to come, and I'm sure we'll get into next week's matchup quite a bit.
And Paul, your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, 70 out of Luis Robert, 85 out of Varsho for Hamko. It's, his bats, 11 points off the pace of what Bry put up. The difference in the arms, Hamko under 100 points, is you're always going to have an uphill battle winning in this league if you're under 100 points with your arms. But As for Bry, I will say this is a down week for him. 570 points is low for a team of his caliber. The biggest hurdle that he'll have to clear, Eloy Jimenez, He's out for probably a few weeks at least, appendectomy. And it's tough because he was finally starting to get it going. He's on a 8-game hitting streak right now. So his loss will be felt. But Bride, he's got the arms, and if he doesn't have the arms, he'll add the arms. So, it's kind of like what Cody said for John Haidt. If you have a down week and you still win, that's a big deal, and Bride's just going to keep chugging along.
Braxton, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I'll echo what you two have just said about having a down week and still winning, because I think at the end of the day, I've been hyping up Bry's team since week 1, and I believe he's still undefeated if I'm not mistaken. But like Paul said, 11-point difference in the bats, that's something to be proud of for Hamko. I mean, we've been talking about Hamko as one of the potential people to sneak into that 6 or 7 spot for a playoff spot, and getting 378 for your bats. That'll really help in that department. But like we were talking about with Smell, he has the assets to maybe go on a run here, try to improve that pitching a little bit. But I think we learned this week that his bats are legit. So, Bry, keep doing what you're doing, bro. You're doing a great job. I know he gets a lot of crap sometimes, but I love what Bry's doing, and I really, really like his team and how he runs it. So we'll see how he does in the weeks coming forward. But I think there's a lot to be excited about for Hamko with this performance.
Yeah, I've kind of been probably the one that's been hyping up Hamko's team the most, and I think it's probably been the offense. I really, 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 really like his offense right now. I love that he got Riley Green, and if I'm not mistaken, he got him pretty cheap, and we'll talk about that in the trades. But I really, really like the offense there. Now, again, the pitching was 71 points. I mean, that is atrociously bad. That's going to take some major, major work. And listen, the teams that have the arms are competing, and they're not going to give them away. The teams that aren't competing don't have any arms. So, I mean, if you need them, I don't know where you're going to get them, but you got to figure something out. As for Bry, yeah, the same applies to John Haidt. Bry was exposed this week. 570 points. I mean, a lot of teams would have beat him this week, including Paul. And he still got the win. He's still undefeated, so he keeps chugging along. I know Bry's got a big matchup next week he's focused on, so that'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But, yeah, this team's good. Teams are going to have down weeks. I think as long as you win, if you can win during that time, you take it and you move on to the next week. So now we will talk about arguably the best matchup of the week. It was the Tampa Tarpons versus the Nashville Sounds. Big Tita with a huge victory, 745 to 708. Tita remains undefeated. Braxton, I will let you start on this matchup. What did you see here?
It's mind-boggling that Jamie keeps losing by putting up so many points like this. Again, he would have beat almost everyone in the league except for Cody and Tita, actually. He scored the second most points in the league this week. Absolutely insane. He was getting Tita outscored him pitching-wise, which I thought was one of the most interesting points of the week, that the difference came down to 53 points for Mason Miller, 26 points from Michael Wacha, 32 points from Kodai Senga, 46 from Merrill Kelly. Like, Tita has a squad. I play him next week, so I'm not very excited about that. We'll talk about that later in the preview section of the podcast. But Tita keeps chugging along. As much shit that he took for the Adolis Garcia trade, he had 43 points, and the waiver would pick up a Brett Rooker, 33. Like, he's competing with the big dogs every week, Tita. He's still undefeated. But at some point, I hope to see some moves out of Jamie. 1-4 should not be acceptable with this talent that's on the roster here. So I really want to see maybe some movement in the next couple weeks and to try and right the ship here a little bit.
Paul, what did you see?
Yeah, I mean, Braxton hit on it. It's tough to – I said it last week. Jamie's the best 1-3 team of all time. Now he's definitely the best 1-4 team of all time. But I've hit on this before, in terms of Jamie's team, that he's got great talent, but he doesn't have great depth. And if you count the players on Jamie's team, I believe it's 11 bats that he played this week, and you can start 10, which means that he played 10 plus one bench bat. I mean, playing 11 bats, he did end up with 418 points, which is a ton of points for your bats. But that's, in my opinion, that's kind of where the difference is. You know, he's kind of low with his bats, and you know, if one of those guys goes down, who's gonna come in and, you know, be able to put up the 56 points that Will Smith did, the 53 that Bobby Witt, the 71 from Acuna? Like, who's gonna be able? Who's that guy that he can plug in and play? So, I mean, it's, you know, it's still early enough in the season that Jamie can turn this around, but he's got to put on his manager hat a little bit, I think. If he wants to turn this around and get to that 6-7 seed. But, you know, as for Tita, his team is really good. You know, he always makes, you know, well-timed trades, I would say. That's kind of his skill. Except for Hunter Brown, only threw up 2 this week. But he's already moved on from him, I think. So, but otherwise, you know, Yandy Diaz is a dog. You know, I liked him. I gave him to him, actually. Christian Yelich, too, I gave him away, too. I'm starting to realize that maybe I shouldn't be trading all these guys. But, you know, Tita, good job. You know, keep going. Undefeated. It's crazy. You're well on your way.
And Connor, what did you see this week?
We've talked about, to be competitive, ideally the pitching and the hitting each score 300 points. 344 pitching, 401 with the bats, even and high numbers. Tita's team is 5-0, and it's fully deserved. Jamie's non-easy opponent. I completely agree with Paul about the depth thing. Maybe Jamie would have won if there had been more managerial moves, and even though Tampa's the best 1-4 team of all time, I think there is going to be a need for some supplements because Acuna's had injury history, Tatis has had injury history, etc. Yelich for 45. I traded Yennier Cano for pretty cheap to Tita. That looks terrible, at least for this week. Brent Brooker, waiver wire pickup of the year, and there were a couple duds from Tita's team. Jose Miranda had -2, Tim Anderson had 4, so the fact that he can withstand those minimal performances just shows how well constructed this roster is. So I think Tita's easily just in a terrific position for the matchups going forward.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you know, Tita has firmly moved himself into that top tier of the league where we talk about, you know, me, John Hyde, Bry, you know, it's Tita now. This team's for real. You know, he's going to make a ton of trades this week. This team's going to look different, but I think Paul's the one that hit on it. He always seems to go out and get the hottest player, use them while they're hot, and then trade them as soon as they start to slow down for the next hottest player. And it's working. I don't know if he can keep that up all season. Eventually a trade deadline's going to hit, and I don't know what Tita's going to do when that happens. But, you know, he's managing the team really well. And, you know, you don't want to say that Jamie's not managing his team well, but he's not. You know, it kind of is what it is with his team. It's star-studded up and down the lineup, but he just kind of leaves them there and lets it go, where a lot of people are kind of moving guys around, plug and playing, you know, playing the hot hand, different things like that. And I think Paul's right about that too. That's probably what the difference is. You know, when you talk about losing a matchup by, you know, 30-something points, you know, that's 2 or 3 bat performances, you know, that changed that outcome right there. So, you know, Jamie's got some work to do. 1-4, team's really good. He's going to get into the easier part of his schedule. He's going to reel off some wins, but I do think, you know, he's going to have to outmanage some people here to steal some wins late in the season. So that looks like that's going to wrap up our matchups of the week. I believe I hit on all the matchups. We will transition now to discuss another heavy trade week in this league. I'm going to go back to – we need to go back to May 1st. So all the trades in May. And I'm going to let Braxton go first. Braxton, any trades that stand out to you this week you want to discuss?
Yeah, I traded Alex Bregman and Jerry Jameson to Connor for Noel V. Marte in a third because I really liked what I was seeing out of Brett Beatty. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Brett Beatty outscored Alex Bregman this week. I know Connor flipped him. I don't think he has him anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I noticed when we were looking through the matchups that Brett Beatty I think had a on par week to that. So I kind of like that trade for me because I used Noel V. Marte in a later trade. I really like the deal I made for Jared Kalenic and Mike Soroka. I'm sure that'll be a popular one that everyone wants to talk about because of the amount of future capital I gave up for two guys that are question marks going through the rest of the season, but I really like what I did there. And lastly, my biggest trade of the week, Riley Green, Kodai Senga, Noel V. Marte, and 2 firsts for Hunter Brown. Like you said, teams that need pitching, you're not sure where you're going to get it, and it's going to cost a premium. And I believe Hunter Brown has some serious upside. He's only 24. I think that he could be a legitimate Cy Young contender for the foreseeable future. I hold him in very high regard, and that's the price I got to pay to get somebody like that. So I'm cool with it. I like that Tita got Mackenzie Gore for those 2 firsts. I like that trade for both sides, actually, because both those picks are expected to be pretty high, Dave and Scott. So I like that trade for both sides. Kind of gets Tita that arm that he's looking for to compete, and it gets Chad some rebuilding assets that are very solid. I like Cody's Graham Ashcraft for Miguel Vargas trade stood out to me. I know talking to him, he said that Miguel Vargas, he believes, is going to be a top 10 bat in the league for the foreseeable future. I don't know about that, but if he believes in him, go get your guy. That's kind of like what I did with Andrew Vaughn when I traded Torkelson, Sears, and Miller for Andrew Vaughn. I've been high on him for a long time, and improving Spencer Torkelson to somebody I can actually feel comfortable playing makes me feel very happy. But I also want to use this opportunity as a PSA for everybody to come get Casey Mize. I want to forget that the Detroit Tigers are a baseball team. I want somebody to take the last one, and I will never get another Tiger ever again. Just fucking come get him, please. So there we go. Overall, really nice week of trades. I like what everybody's doing. I like seeing the activity. There's like 3 or 4 trades a day, which is really fun and entertaining when I get random texts on my phone seeing somebody made a deal. It's always fun to look at throughout the day. So, yeah.
Connor, I see you were involved in a couple trades this week. What's your thoughts on these?
Yeah, so the first couple weeks in the league, I think I mostly focused on the classic rebuilding style of trade stuff, hoard picks, etc. I don't have a great 2024 pick, and quite frankly, I don't think the division I'm in, the Grace Sizemore division, is that deep, very top heavy, depending on what Smell decides to do with his team. So I'm just trying to get some quality buys for the most part. I traded for Chris Bryant early in the week and then flipped him for Kyle Wright. Traded Tim Anderson to get Willie Adames, who had a nice performance and a prospect. Some other moves. Yeah, I think those are the big ones. Of course, the Hunter Brown trade is really interesting. 2 top picks in Noel V. Marte and some experienced pitching. Tita also got Eduardo Rodriguez and for flipping Riley Green. I really like the Andrew Vaughn deal for Braxton, so I think it was a great trade week for the league, and hopefully it continues to go at this pace.
And Paul, you got any thoughts on some trades?
I had a quick question for Connor. Maybe I missed it. The trade with Tita, Contreras, Bregman, Acuna, Jameson for Kirk, France, and TA. Just thoughts on that one, because that one's an interesting trade to me.
Yeah, so I think Tim Anderson is one of my favorite players that's not a Cardinal or Twin kind of the my home team. So I really wanted to acquire him. Alex Bregman is a really good player, and third base really isn't that deep of a position. But I thought that my team could handle moving on from him and maybe gain some more quality depth pieces. Ty France is 27, and eventually Tim Anderson turned into Willie Adames, who is also a younger player that could help my team for quite some time. And I viewed Kirk as a slight upgrade from William Contreras. So I think overall, parting with Bregman was tough, but that deal helped me fill some holes.
Gotcha. All right, that's good perspective. For me, I only had 2 trades this week. One I really like, and one cost me my matchup. So the one that cost me my matchup, I'll just let that one go. I got Esteury Ruiz, Drake Jameson, and Felnin Celestin for Tita, and I gave him Wilson Contreras and Jonathan Clase. I like that deal a lot for me. I like Esteury Ruiz a lot. I mean, I only had him, I think, 3 days, and he got me 30-some points. I'm hopeful that he'll be part of my retool going forward. As for Jonathan Clase, I'm really big on him. I think in the updates over the summer for top 100 lists, he'll be on every single one. That's a good get for Tita. The other trade that really stood out to me was Tita got Chapman and Willie Adames for Thairo Estrada, Alex Bregman, and Jose Miranda. To me, that trade kind of works out with Chapman and Bregman being a little bit of a wash. So it's Estrada and Miranda for Willie Adames. I like Willie Adames a lot, but Estrada's been really good this year, and towards the end of last year, he kind of picked it up a lot. He's got multi-position eligibility. Same thing with Miranda. He's first base, third base, and he's like a good 5-point bat, only 24, and I think he'll get better. The other trade, if I can find it, was today with Connor, and he might have touched on it, but it was Kyle Wright and Tita got Chris Bryant, Parker Meadows, and Dylan Beavers. I'm not very big on Kyle Wright. I think he gets injured a little bit too much for my taste. But the return wasn't, stellar. Chris Bryant's a good bat. He's kind of the same thing with injuries. Dylan Beavers, I like. He's an Oriole prospect. I think he'll be climbing the lists here soon. I don't think he has the Kowser, Kjerstad type of ceiling, but, just a really solid bat. And then the last one I'll talk about was today as well. And it was Tita getting Graham Ashcraft and Dave getting Noelvi Marte, 2 guys that were already on the move this week alone. Tita gets the pitcher and Dave gets, a really solid piece for the future. I've talked before about Noelvi Marte. I love him a lot. And I'm not super big on Graham Ashcraft, so I think Dave made a good trade there.
Yeah, it was a busy week. Tita's in the league, so of course it was a busy trade week. A lot of trades going down. I thought Bragton really made some good moves this week. I really like the Torkelson, J.P. Sears, and Bobby Miller for Andrew Vaughn in the third trade. I really liked his Jared Kelenic trade. I took some heat for liking that for Bragton, but I did like that for Bragton. The Hunter Brown trade was probably the trade that I didn't necessarily agree with there. I know Bragton's super down on Riley Green. I'm not. And then, of course, he gave Noelvi Marte up in that deal, too. Domingo Herman got tossed around a little bit. He's having a great season. Trying to figure out where he ended up. I know Tita traded for him, but I think he moved him later in the week, if I'm not mistaken. Can't find it. Maybe he didn't. Anyways, Tita also got Mackenzie Gore for 2 first-round picks. I did not know that Mackenzie Gore's price was 2 first-round picks. I didn't have picks, but if I knew that, I probably would have tried to offer something. The Graham Ashcraft deal was pretty interesting. Tita had offered me Noel V. Marte, or kind of a little bit earlier in the week, and honestly, I was really what it come down to was it was Graham Ashcraft for Noel V. Marte and Riley Green. That was offered, I accepted, and Tita backed out. So it kind of opened that window for me to explore other opportunities. Tita come back a little bit after he traded Riley Green away and wanted in on Graham Ashcraft again, but I was already too deep with Dave and took the Miguel Vargas deal, which I'm thankful for. I was very excited to get Miguel Vargas for Graham Ashcraft. And then Tita ended up getting Graham Ashcraft anyways with just Noel V. Marte. So I think everybody was probably pretty happy there with that. And let me see. Oh, and then this trade, the last trade, the trade today, I wanted to talk to Connor about, where he got Kyle Wright for Chris Bryant, Parker Meadows, and Dylan Beavers. Connor, is Kyle Wright a guy you like, or is that just a warm body pitcher that you was trying to get your hands on?
I like Kyle Wright. He's a potentially excellent arm for a truly excellent team, and there definitely was a need for more pitching. My team is more skewed towards hitters than I would like it to be, but the fact that Wright has had quality performances, and quite frankly, the NL East isn't looking as good as we expected it to. So I think Wright could be an arm. There definitely is some injury risk, as there is with Portman. So I definitely do like Wright. Hope he gets healthy, and I think for going forward, he can definitely be a nice addition to the team.
Okay, we will move off trades and move into preview the matchups for next week. We will start with the Tampa Tarpons versus the El Paso Chihuahuas. This is a very interesting matchup. Paul, what do you think?
So we got Jamie, we got Smell. I like Jamie to kind of get it going. I really think that it's time for him to get a win. And Smell's a great team. I talked about him earlier. He's got a great team. This is going to be a close matchup. I got to go with the team that's got the more talent. I think Tampa's going to win. It's going to be another matchup that'll be 600 plus on each side. Give me Tampa.
Bragton, what do you think?
I could totally see this being an upset just based off of the sheer management abilities here. I think that Smell will definitely be making deals throughout the week that will try and improve his position. Right now, Fantrax has it as a 75-point game in favor of Jamie. So, and Smell is only projected 7 starts right now, and Jamie's 6. But I think that Smell will be making the moves throughout the week that will at least put him in a position where we could talk about this next Sunday as a very interesting matchup of the week. But at the end of the day, I do think that Jamie will get it done just because of what Paul said. Like, the talent has to take over at some point.
And Connor, what do you think?
If everyone stays healthy, I think Jamie gets it back on track. Bryce Harper almost scored 40 points 6 months after John surgery. That's insane. So, given Jamie's top players, and I guess it's a top-heavy roster, there probably will be a win here, but I could definitely see this being a 5 or 10-point matchup because it does seem likely that Smell is going to make some big-ticket trade to improve the roster and maybe give the best 1-4 team ever a run for their money.
Yeah, I think as it is right now, I think I'm probably on the fence of Jamie gets in the win column this week. I do think it'll be close, but I just got to go with that team. There's just too much talent there. I think the Tarpons are able to get back in the win column this week. The next matchup is going to be the Rochester Red Wings versus Oklahoma City Dodgers. Bragton, I'll give it to you. Who do you think wins this matchup?
So Fantrax is projecting Dave to win 549 to 456, and that's about how I see this going. Chad suffered a very big loss to Cody last week, and I feel like that's going to be more of the same this week. Not by nearly 500 points, but I think Dave gets it done pretty handily.
And Connor.
Dave's going to get it done. I think John Gray has a pretty favorable to-start week. Michael Lorenzen has been a little bit up and down since coming back from the injured list, but that could be a potential performance. And then, the Dodgers just had a rough week, and I'm not sure if they have the arm to do it currently. Fantrax is projecting the arms to go 210 to 181 in Dave's favor, so I think that's going to be pretty key. Jerron Duran should also have a really nice week, so I think Dave's going to get in the win column here.
And Paul.
I'll also take Dave. I think he's got 4 starts lined up for tomorrow, which means that he should be able to get to that at least a 10-11 start mark, possibly even 12. I wouldn't sleep on Chad. He's got a good team as well. He'll be getting his starts in, but I think it's going to be close. Both teams in the 500 range, but I'll take Dave.
Yeah, I think Dave has the better team right now. Dave has mentioned wanting to sell off fast. So that's going to be interesting to see how quickly he's able to do that. But I think as is right now, you got to give the advantage to Dave. The next matchup this is probably the game of the week. If records, that's going to be okay. So this is still going to be a very good matchup, though. Nashville Sounds versus the Bismarck Larks. Paul, I'll let you start here. How do you see this matchup going?
I am so looking forward to this matchup. I can't even tell you. It's Tita, it's Bracton. Both of these teams, have their eyes on the playoffs. One doing it one way and Tita doing it his way. Man, this is going to be close. I'm going to take Tita because he is undefeated. He finds a way. I think this will be high scoring, knockdown, drag out affair, close on Sunday. I'll take Tita very close.
Bracton, your thoughts?
Obviously I have to pick myself, but I agree that it's going to be very, very close. I'm going to be interested to see, and I'm going to monitor Tita's trades a little more than I already do this week, so I can see what he's trying to do, maybe make a couple moves of my own. I think I could see this as a week where I make 5 to 6 trades as opposed to the 2 or 3 that I've been making, just because I really want this one. And my gauntlet weeks ahead, I have this game against Tita, and then I have another game against Tita in 3-4 weeks after this. So this is going to be a matchup that I think will be the matchup of the week, but there will be another matchup in the future between us, and I really want to get off on the right foot by getting this one. So best of luck to Tita if you're listening. You got a great team. You're doing a great job. And this is going to be a fun one for sure.
Connor, what's your thoughts?
I have Tita winning this for 2 main reasons. The first, Bracton's team is super young, but that comes with inconsistent performance. Last week, or this previous week, there were some great ones. There could definitely be some regression there. Tita, for the most part, of course, the roster's constantly churning, but with maybe the exception of the Hunter Brown trade, most of the most recent acquisitions the last couple weeks have been buying. So I could definitely see where Tita does more deals to improve his team on the finer points. So because of that, I think Fantrax has it relatively close, but I think Tita is going to moderately convincing win here.
Yeah, this is tough for me. I'm with Paul on this is super interesting. Listen, if Tita scores 740 points again, he's going to win. I mean, Bracton's not scoring 740 points. But I don't think that's Tita's ballpark average, okay? I think his team just played really well last week. Similar to mine, I'm not going to score 850 points this week. But, I think a lot of this goes into what Bracton does. I think he's teetered a little bit back and forth on the going in, buying, selling, going in, selling. He's 4-1 now. He's got a new mindset, new week ahead. This is going to be a super interesting matchup. I think right now, as rosters are, I'm going to give the advantage to Tita in a close matchup. If Bracton was to buy a few pieces here, my opinion would change pretty quickly. All right, the next matchup is the Hartford Yard Goats versus the Kannapolis Cannonballers. John Height versus Homco. Connor, I'll let you start this one.
This is going to be a Hartford blowout. Currently, Fantrax has them winning by 180 points. I can 100% see that mark being Max Fried is questionable, so it'll be interesting to see how one of the premier arms on the Goats is able to perform next week. But, yeah, I'm not sure if there's too much to discuss here. Varsho's not going to repeat an 85-point performance, and I think when John Height's team is scoring 670 points in a down week, this could get ugly.
And Paul.
It's a good opportunity for a bounce-back week for John Height. I will say it wouldn't shock me, I guess, if Homco kept this close. I think he's got really, really solid lineup. He scored a lot of points with his bats this past week. I think he's going to be able to do that again. I think he's got a sustainable line. I'm going to take John Height in Hartford. Shohei is Shohei. And he's got a double start, I think, from Zach Gallen this week. I'll take the Hartford Yard Goats, But Homco is a dangerous team, I'll say it now.
And Bracton, what do you think?
I agree closer to what Connor was saying. I feel like the Fantrax projection is pretty much right on with the 180 difference. I don't see John Height having another down week. I could easily see him topping the 700-point mark. I am going to pick John Height in a pretty convincing fashion here. But I'm not going to hate on Homco's team. I think he's doing a great job. I think he's got some pieces there. But I don't think that John Height is going to have another week where he's not going to be happy about most of his players' performances.
Yeah, for me, not a lot to say. You guys hit on most of it. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Homco's pitching's coming off like a 70-point performance. That's not going to keep it anywhere close with John Height. So I think advantage Yard Goats. By how much? That's the question. We'll see if John Height can get his team rolling this week. The next matchup we will talk about is the Clearwater Beach Dogs versus the scalding hot Richmond Flying Squirrels. Paul, you take us. What do you see in this matchup?
The world-beating Richmond Flying Squirrels. Best roster in the league. All right, no, I mean, Scott knows what the team is. He beat me this week. But I think it's a good bounce-back opportunity for Hen Dog. I like Clearwater. I see his lineup is illegal, so something that Dog has to clear up. But you just look up and down that lineup. I don't know how that team is 2-3. It still blows my mind. But I think he'll be 3-3 after this week.
And Connor.
I'm going to call the upset. I don't know if Hen Dog has the best pitching matchups. Luis Castillo is going to pitch in Texas. Drew Rasmussen, I think, draws a tough start in New York. So we talk about the balance of pitching and hitting, and it seems like, especially based off of Cal Quantrill and the other pitchers' recent performances, that Scott's pitching might be better than expected. And then, obviously, we like his bats a lot. Lourdes Gurriel had a monster 3-day period. So I think not even counting the illegal roster Hen Dog currently has, there is room to maybe see some fireworks here.
And Bragton.
I really like that analysis from Connor. I was going to pick Hen Dog by a lot, but now I'm going to say Hen Dog very close. because of those pitching matchups. And I feel like, again, if depending on what Scott does in the trade market throughout this week, I could see it now being pretty close. I'd still think Hendog gets it done based off the same reason why I think Jamie gets it done is just pure talent's going to take over. But Scott has a chance to really put himself on the map here, depending on how close that he makes it for the rest of the year coming up.
Yeah, it's interesting. You want to say advantage Hendog, but that was a rough week. 2-3. Scott's coming in off a big win. I'm going to give advantage Hendog, but I think it'll be close. Hendog's got to get some things rolling here, and I think this may be the week he kind of turns the corner. He said on Main Chat that they're going to do some soul searching in Clearwater. That could mean bad for Scott and the Flying Squirrels, so we will see what happens in that matchup. The next matchup is the Amarillo Sod-Poodles versus the Norfolk Tide. I'm going to let Connor go. Connor, what do you see here?
I put up 600 points in 3 of the 5 weeks, I think. So I do see my team coming together a little bit, but my arms still aren't there. I think in terms of that, Jose Barrios for Paul has really turned around. I was harassing him a little bit, trying to acquire him, and that just didn't turn out. Martin Perez is going to have a better start than a -10. He's pitching in Oakland Friday. And, of course, the bats for Paul are really good for a retool. There are some quality players that can put 6-7 points a game. Kyle Schwarber, obviously, I think was a really nice add. So it should be a close matchup, but I am going to regrettably say that Paul probably has this.
And Paul.
It's going to be close. It's hard to have any confidence in my team right now, but I'm going to pick myself up a little bit. I think Connor kind of hinted at it that Martin Perez hopefully will be better this week. Kikuchi will be better, or will just be the same. Atlanta's a tough matchup. That's who he has this week. Same with Barrios, so it's going to be tougher. But Justin Steele's got the Cardinals, and they're trash. So, but I'll take myself. My goal this week is 600 points. If I can put up 600 points, I think I can take down Connor. If I'm short of that, it's going to be another nail biter. If I lose again by 2 points, I might just quit the league. But I'll take myself. I believe in myself this week.
Brighton, what do you think?
I've been flip-flopping ever since we started having this conversation about this matchup, but I think at the end of the day, I think I'm going to pick Connor based on those pitching matchups. I'm not a huge believer in some of the starts that Paul's got lined up with Barrios and some of his other guys, but I think that Connor will keep the bats close, but at the end of the day, I think that pitching from Connor will be the difference, actually. So I think I'm going to call the upset on this one and see Connor get his second win of the season.
Yeah, this is going to be close. This is going to be incredibly, incredibly close. But I think Paul's just got too much talent. Having a bad week last week, fantasy teams typically recover pretty well from that. So I think Connor just simply caught Paul at the wrong time. But I do think it'll be close. I think this will be within 20 points. This is going to be another nail biter for Paul. So we will see how that matchup unfolds. The last matchup is the matchup of the week. An undefeated team will fall this week for sure. We have the 5-0 Hot Rods against the 5-0 Vibe. Connor, I'll let you start. How do you see this matchup unfolding?
The team that falls is going to be Bry. I think recently he has not faced the best teams or have the gauntlet that Braxton is having. So realistically, I think 570, low 600s is not going to cut it against Cody's team, and Cody's shown resilience when some of his players aren't performing as well. So while it should be a fun matchup to see, I do think that Cody is going to reaffirm himself as the top team in the league.
Paul, how do you see?
So the question here is the over-under for Cody's team, and that's 700 points. If he goes over 700 points, I think he wins. If he's under 700 points, though, I think this could be close. I'm going to pick Cody because I will never pick against Cody unless there's major injuries that happen to his team. I'm excited to see Zeke Tovar. He finally called him up this week. See how he kind of fits into his team. But I think Bry's got a chance. Especially with all the ads that he makes. He's pretty good at it. But I'll say it one more time. It's 700. That's what you got to look for when you're looking at Cody's team. Because, especially for this week, because with Bryce, Cody gets over 700, I can lock it up.
And Braxton, what do you see in this matchup?
I'm the same as Paul. I'm never going to pick against Cody. I think Cody's going to win every week. But I do think it's going to be close just because of how much I love Bry's team and Bry's style of managing. I think that it'll be close on like Friday, but then Cody's going to pull away, I feel. So just based off sheer talent taking over, I'm going to go with Cody, but I expect it to be close at multiple points throughout the week.
Yeah, there is just not a lot of confidence going into this week. And honestly, guys, I'm sure you're thinking you scored 850 points last week. How are you not confident? That's exactly why I'm not confident, because just like how I said, when Paul's team struggled, they typically rebound the next week. It kind of works both ways. I'm not going to score 800 points this week. I feel like I kind of wasted a lot of high-impact performances last week. It's going to be tight. I'm not going to predict a winner with this one. I can't. I just know, this is probably my real first test, and maybe Bryce too. We're in the same division. This is big. This is a big matchup. This could determine a whole lot this early in the season. So it's going to be interesting to see and watch unfold. I think we got a good week ahead. A lot of good matchups ahead. It's going to be pretty interesting to see. Now at this point in the podcast, kind of the last thing that we do is a final word. I'm going to go around the room, and if anybody wants to say a final word or any thoughts, you had to take as much time as you need. Braxton, you go first.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the most exciting week of the year because of the amount of matchups that we have that are really going to draw some attention, like mine and Tita's, Cody's and Bry's. I really think that this is going to be a really fun week of just deals and trades and competitive matchups all around. I really like where we're at as a league as well. So keep up the good work, everybody. I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. Go Larks.
Connor, you.
I think the main takeaway this week is that Tita reaffirmed himself as a contender, beating the Tarpons in a 700-point clash. The Hunter Brown trade, I think after the dust settled, Tita turned Brown into Kodai Senga, Mackenzie Gore, Noelvi Marte, and Riley Green. Some of those have since been flipped, but he has the major league talent to continue winning and to add more. So the fact that a lot of the discussion has been about the 5, 6, 7 seeds for the playoffs, but the fact that he could get a 3 or 4 pretty easily with Jamie being 1-4 and the other developments in the league, it'll be really interesting to see the dynamic once the biggest matchups of the year happen.
And Paul, do you have any thoughts for us?
Yeah, so take a walk with me here. There's 3 teams, so there's 5 teams at the top of the league. We got Bowling Green, Hartford, Rocky Mountain, Nashville, and Bismarck. All 4-1 or better. The top 4 or 5-0, undefeated. Probably conservatively can say those 5 teams will make them. But let's take a look at the rest of the teams. We got 3 teams that are 2-3. And then we have 5 teams that are 1-4. That means, if we're doing math, that's 8 teams within 1 game of the last 2 playoff spots after week 5. That means theoretically we could have all 8 of those teams, and even Dave at 0-5, he's no slouch. 9 teams potentially that are still fighting for 2 playoff spots. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Getting into the playoffs, that's all you got to do. Because in this league's history, the number 1 seed has never won the championship. A top 3 seed has never won the championship. So there's, 9 teams, there's nobody out of it yet. And, I say I'm retooling, rebuilding, and I am. But, I'm still going to fight for this, and I think all 9 teams that are there, I think all of them still have a really good chance. We saw it this week. I thought the best or the worst roster in the league beat me by 2 points. So you just never know, and that's what makes fantasy baseball great. And I'm so excited for this week and see what we can do this week. And I'm going to beat Connor, so that's going to suck for you.
Yeah, the league is just in an absolute fantastic spot. Every week, every team is throwing out everything they can to win, which that's just so rare in a dynasty league. Normally 5 or 6 teams are, tanking for draft position. We don't have that here. We got guys that are jockeying and trying to trade for pieces that's going to help them and competing. And, league's just in a really good spot. It's going to be, this week there's some big matchups. It's going to be really interesting to see. And as I say at the end of every podcast, it's going to be interesting to see what Tita does. Because we know Tita is going to make moves. And if for some reason he's not, we're going to go to Hopkinsville and check a pulse. But, the guy, it's just going to be really fun to see how this week plays out. I think it was another great podcast. We appreciate all you guys listening and hanging with us every Sunday night. And we are going to sign off for this podcast, and we will see you back here same time Sunday night for the Base on Balls podcast.